You know the old saying, if it's not in Salesforce, it didn't
Yep.
happen. What a ridiculous statement that is. There are all sorts of things that are not in Salesforce
Mm.
or they're not in your marketing
Yep.
attribution software that did happen.
Yep.
That conversation where one executive mentioned to a friend this
Yep.
great company there were, that's not
Right.
in Salesforce.
No.
The fact that you're speaking at a conference and a lot of people saw you and they were drawn towards you, the fact that people are seeing you on social and other things, like there's a whole
Yep.
lot that drives deals forward,
Yeah.
puts you in the considerations.
Welcome to this episode of Everything Communicates. My name is David Tushak. I am the founder of a little company called Everything Communications, where we help companies to maximize and optimize communication across their organization. I'm so excited to have Steve Watt joining me today. Steve is Seismic's social selling and employee advocacy expert. Steve, thanks so much for joining me today.
Oh, it's my pleasure, David. This is great. I'm really happy to upgrade our relationship from LinkedIn friends to now virtual studio friends. This is a cool setup you've got here.
Oh yeah, thank you, very much. Yeah, I really enjoyed it. I mean, to me, after a while, and you'll see in the next 15 minutes, we'll forget that we're in a virtual studio, and you're looking at me right now, right, and I'm looking at you, and we're in the same space, and it really starts to play in your mind. It's not the same as being in person, but it's about as close as I've ever experienced. So
It's a really interesting experience. I've done a lot of videos, a lot of podcasts. I have not been in this kind of environment before, and I like it.
yeah, right on. Cool. Well, yeah, you alluded to LinkedIn. I've been connected to you and following you for, I don't know, 3, maybe 4 or 5 years now already on LinkedIn. And I'm going to tell you, you are my go-to expert on LinkedIn, on LinkedIn. So, I mean,
Well, thank
like,
you.
you know what I mean? Like on the topic of LinkedIn, you are one of the people that I really appreciate and follow and really find kinship with. We're going to get into it here, but I suspect that based on some of your posts that you're probably of the same mind as me, where I really feel like companies and individuals really don't get the treasure that is LinkedIn. And how they can utilize it to propel their careers and both their company brand and their personal brands forward. And some people, I think, they don't even like the idea of thinking about a personal brand, but um, we have personal brands, whether we like it or not. We have personal brands, right? And so, I don't know why people from executives, CEOs, various C-suite, all the way down to, I don't know why everybody in the organization wouldn't be working to maximize and optimize their personal brand and their company's brands.
I agree with you so much. I mean, the language is a funny thing, and I mean, first of all, I completely agree that there's a massive missed opportunity here, both at the individual level and the company level, and we can get into that. We can talk about the sales opportunity, the marketing opportunity, the talent acquisition opportunity, the thought leadership opportunity, and more. But back to language, and I actually avoid the terminology personal brand a lot because, as you said, David, a lot of people are a little bit put off by that. There's a lot of baggage around that kind of
Mhm.
terminology. Same with influencer and things like this. And you think about really vain, attention seeking people on TikTok and on
Sure.
Instagram, all this kind. People say, like, whoa, that's not me. I
Yep.
don't want any part of that. And
Yep.
I agree. Um, I tend to speak in terms of reputation and relationships and trust. And if you ask someone, does your reputation matter? Does it matter to your career? Does your reputation help you to be successful in what you do? I think everyone would agree that yes, it does.
Sure.
Do relationships help you? Relationships that you have built over the years and cultivated, do they help you?
Right.
Uh, Again, I can't imagine why anyone would say no.
Right.
And you have an opportunity to build your reputation both inside your own firm and in the broader world. You
Yep.
have an opportunity to nurture existing relationships and build a whole lot of new relationships.
Yep.
uh, it's right there. It's right there on LinkedIn,
Yep.
and yet you're sitting on the sideline. you're
Yep.
you're not doing it.
Right.
This is a missed opportunity, and I find that that kind of conversation tends to be more successful than build your brand, and a lot of people just check out immediately.
I think there's a few different areas that I'd love to get into on that specifically. I think there's the corporate side that a lot of companies aren't maximizing nearly the opportunity to take advantage from a branding perspective. Reputation, yes, I think that is kind of where their thinking is or their activity is from a, like a, let's just have a good reputation. Like it's very safe. You know what I mean? Like let's not have
But
a
they think
bad
about the company reputation. How much are
yeah,
they thinking about the individual's reputation?
well, exactly.
That's what I think is mess. Of course, every company cares about their reputation, and as you said, yeah, they tend to play a lot of things safe, and usually that's wise in various ways. But a lot of companies aren't thinking very much about individual reputations.
Right.
I maintain that brand today is different from the past, and reputation today is different from the past. It's
Okay.
less about the corporate entity. It's less about headquarters. It's more about the field. It's it's
Mhm.
it's like edge computing, the way edge computing pushed processing power to the edge of the firm. I believe reputation and brand today lives at the edge of the firm. It lives in your people. And if you are not purposefully helping your people to strengthen their reputations and their relationships, then you are missing
Yeah.
a huge opportunity for the firm. So yes, we care about reputation, but are we actually talking to our people about their own reputations and
Hmm.
how it helps them as individuals,
Hmm.
and collectively it helps the firm if we work together to enhance.
Yeah, 100%. And I find that people across the board really don't get it. Full. I mean, the marketers do, right? But from the CEO perspective, I don't know that they really get what the opportunity is with LinkedIn or with any social.
I don't think
And
marketers do either. We can
oh,
go
oh,
there
is
in a
that right?
moment, but
Okay.
yeah, I don't think most marketers do. I mean, most marketers are locked in what I consider to be a very old-fashioned mindset
Mhm.
of promotional content, cheerleading the company. Hooray for us. We won an award. We just
Right.
released a new product.
Yes.
We achieved some milestone. We are so awesome.
Yeah.
It's a cheerleading motion. And marketers, generally speaking, are not particularly client centric. They're not particularly buyer centric. Everything is so clearly framed from a cheerleading hooray for us
Yeah.
perspective that it tends to just be ignored by most customers or most
Yeah.
prospects because it's just like, oh, here comes some more promotional content.
100%. So, do you have theories on why that is?
I think it's legacy mindsets. I think everything starts with mindsets. And I mean, if you think about social in particular, and you think about LinkedIn even more particularly, think about what the legacy mindset is there is really two things. It's your resume, it's a job board, it's a place to upload your
Yeah.
resume.
Yeah.
So individuals tend to be very stale and boring with just essentially their profile being a list of all the places they used to work and a bunch of keywords they're packing in there to trigger an ATS system to get their resume reviewed to get their next job. They're not using it to help with today's job.
Right.
And then marketers tend to see LinkedIn as a broadcast advertising channel, just one more place to push ads, push paid ads, push organic promotional content. It's just
Yeah.
another channel. It's broadcast. And if you want to add in sellers, I work a lot with sellers. Sellers have another damaging legacy mindset. They see LinkedIn as a giant Rolodex. They see LinkedIn as basically a list of everyone they wish that they could talk to. And
Yes.
why won't they talk to me?
Yeah.
Why do they keep ignoring me? But they go in with a hunting mindset. So
Yeah.
if you've got a bunch of people thinking that it's just a place for your
Yep.
resume, a bunch of marketers thinking it's a place to just blast
Yep.
promotional content, a bunch of salespeople out there
Yep.
hunting,
Yep.
none of those things work anymore. So it's those
Yeah.
old mindsets that are holding all of us back from
I,
what's
I,
possible.
I think that's so key, right? Like that is what you've just described is what LinkedIn is to so many people, to those groups, to salespeople, that's what it is. To people who are on the fringes and just see it as a job board, that's what it is. And to marketers, that's what it is. And to executives, that's what it is, right? There's not a lot of executives, let's say. And I mean, I get it. Executives don't have a lot of time to just be scrolling through LinkedIn and seeing what's happening in the world. However, if that's what it is to people, then they don't experience it from the perspective of what you and I experience it from, right? Where there's
Absolutely.
actually really smart people having really intelligent conversations, building the future and talking about what the future of work is, what the future of marketing is, what the future of communications is, what the future of social media is, right? To me, this is this is the way I see it, okay? And you tell me if you agree. To me, LinkedIn, first and foremost, because there's no other place that I can think of that's quite like it. But it is the online community of the smartest, most experienced, most educated, most accomplished people on earth, right? Who come together, and you can learn from these people. You can follow them. You can see, you can be inspired by them. You can hear about what they're thinking, how they're thinking differently about this subject or that subject. Where else do you have that? Where has that ever existed of our species, right? Where you can actually engage some of these, most successful people in your industry and learn from them. Um,
Absolutely. You used one of my favorite words there, David, in your description of it. I've, for a long time now, been saying that LinkedIn is the greatest ongoing business conversation the world has ever had. I
yeah,
reject the notion that it's a job board. I reject the
yeah,
notion that it's just a broadcast advertising channel. I reject the notion that it's a hunting ground for
yeah,
salespeople. It's a conversation. It's an ongoing business conversation that a lot of people are just willfully sitting out.
yeah,
And but it's happening with or without you. And
right,
no, not all your customers and prospects are there, but a lot more are there than you realize.
yeah,
And no, not all your competitors are there, which is great because you can build a real advantage. But if they are there, are you going to let them build that advantage? I
mm,
mean, when you look at it as a great ongoing business conversation, it starts to flip some switches in your head about what I ought to do, how I ought to do it, what I ought to get from it. And we all know how to have conversations in the offline world. We all do it every day. We have face-to-face conversations, we have telephone conversations, we get on Zoom calls and team calls, we go to meetings. We know how to be real human beings who have two-way and multi-way conversations. And
mm.
then we get on LinkedIn and we forget all of it. Like it's
Yeah,
just gone. We forget every bit of it, and we either just do nothing at all, we
yeah,
freeze,
yeah,
or we become these like advertising robots for
right,
our company. Like just bring that conversational
yeah,
mindset and conversational skill set that you
yeah,
all have,
yeah.
bring it onto LinkedIn, and it opens up a world of opportunities.
Yeah, that's a really great way to think about it, I think, is thinking about it as an in real life scenario, right? If you went to a trade show or an expo floor or networking event and you had your booth there and you're just standing there like with your resume held out
Yeah.
or just
Or
like,
it's the coffee break at the conference, and you just walk around shouting, "My company is amazing. We just won an award."
yeah, yeah.
Hey, we released a new product.
Right.
Hey, like, people would be backing away from you and
Yeah, right.
like, what is wrong with that guy?
Yeah. So I take your point that LinkedIn is not those particular things that you pointed out. However, that I think that's the problem is that it is that to those people, right? That's how they see it, right? And until they see it differently, they won't get it. They won't get the opportunity that it is to them. It's like it's a potential opportunity. It's the potential to be something great. But they until they capitalize on it, until they capitalize on it individually, personally, and as a company, they're missing out. And like you said, they're sitting on the sidelines, letting their competition and other people take that spotlight or get up in front of the people with a microphone and say, "Hey, listen, who wants to have a conversation? Let's talk about the future of work. Let's talk about where things are headed." Right, and that's where everybody's going to be at their booth, listening to them and what they think.
Yeah,
Right?
it already is that. It's up to you whether you choose to join in or not. And I like to back to our conference analogy there. Uh, Imagine you're at a big conference and it's the end of the day, all the speaker sessions and everything are done, and there's now the cocktail reception going on, and there's a bunch of people mingling and talking.
Yep.
Do you go in there and meet and greet and talk to people, or do you go back to your room and pick up your email?
Well, so here's the thing. I'm in sales. I've been in sales for the last 20 years, right? I've been in marketing, right? So I love these kinds of things. I love opportunities to have conversations with people about what they're doing, what they're trying to do, and what they're there for, and what they're looking for, right? Uh, a lot of people don't want to do that. I'm saying other salespeople that I've worked with, right? And at various companies, like that's who I've been at my companies, is somebody who's out there, whether I'm at the trade show, whether I'm at a networking event, I'm out there and I'm not necessarily the most gregarious person, but I don't know, like I'm just that's what I'm there for. Like I want to have conversations, deep,
Mhm.
meaningful conversations about mutual points of interest.
But there aren't
So,
too many salespeople at a conference who are going to choose to go back to their room and pick up their email or watch TV while their customers and their prospects and their competitors are having conversations. It's not too many are going to do that. In fact, imagine you're at a conference with several of your coworkers, and one of them says, "Nah, I'm not going to do that." I think you're not really doing your job here. You're not really doing what's right for your own career nor for
right.
the company. I
Yeah.
mean, we are going to that cocktail
Yeah.
reception, and we are shaking hands and kissing babies. Like we
Yeah.
are going there, and we are going to have some conversations. Some of them are going to be with people we already know. Some of them are going to be people that we're just going to meet for the first time.
Mhm.
Some of them may lead to business opportunities, others may not, but
Mhm.
we're going there
Like that's the
because we
job. Like that's
know that it would be really foolish not to,
yeah.
because our competitors are probably going to be there,
Yeah.
and a lot of people are going to be there, and we're not going to sit it out.
Yeah.
So if you go back to your room because you don't want to have conversations, that's not a good look. But so I would just take that same thinking and apply it to LinkedIn. It is your prerogative. No one should force you to participate on LinkedIn.
Yeah.
But if you're not doing it, you are missing a personal opportunity. And collectively as a firm, you're missing an opportunity if you're not empowering and enabling people to do it and do it well. But it all starts with that mindset, right? Why would I go if I think it's for job search? I'm
Right.
not looking for
Exactly.
a job. I like my job.
Right.
Why would I go if I think it's just for hollering advertising messages at people? I don't want
Yeah.
that.
Yeah.
So you've got to, if you want to build the kind of culture within your firm. I like to call it the emergence of the super connected enterprise. The idea that you're really enabling and empowering everyone within your firm to build real reputation and
Yeah.
real relationships and real trust at scale. This sort of super connected firm. If you're going to build that kind of culture, it has to start with mindsets,
Mhm.
because people really are held back by what they think LinkedIn is, what they
Mhm.
think the job to be done there is.
Mhm.
You got to challenge that. And if you can knock out those old mindsets and build a new mindset, build a new job to be done, the people feel so much more liberated
Mhm.
to actually go and be human beings in this great conversation.
Yeah, 100%. I agree with that. And as somebody who was in sales, it was always frustrating for me to be one that was out there and on LinkedIn and talking and promoting conversations. And my colleagues didn't seem to be very interested in that, and maybe even my boss, right? Like
Mhm.
it wasn't part of the culture to do that. And so when you do that as a salesperson, I think you can stand out, and people can go like, who does he think he is? Like, we've got a marketing team that does that, right? Or like he's not busy, like he doesn't have like I'm here making phone calls all day long and he's just on LinkedIn and having conversations and posting this and posting that, right? So I think there's a number of different reasons why people are or have been put off with the idea of putting themselves out there and utilizing it as um, a conduit to go have those conversations. But I still think that it's missing the opportunity. I think that they don't get the opportunity. I think it's like you said, like going to a trade show or a networking event and going back to the room to go make phone calls and email your customers. Like this is where they are.
They're right here.
They're
Yeah.
right
Yeah. Go
here.
talk to them. Go talk to them right now.
Yes.
Yeah.
Right.
What I often say, you're talking specifically about what holds salespeople back.
Mhm.
What I always remind salespeople, I work with a lot of salespeople, I work with a lot of sales teams, and I remind them about how busy and noisy their buyer's world is and how inundated their buyers are with sales and marketing messages. Everywhere they go, everything they do across every channel, every device, they are inundated, and they're putting up walls to keep salespeople out.
Yep.
They're putting up technological
Yep.
walls in terms of
Yep.
spam filters
Yep.
and ad blockers, and like, I mean, who answers unknown callers on their phone anymore?
Yep.
They're also putting up like psychological
Yep.
walls. Like they come from a place of it doesn't feel good to be hunted,
Yeah.
and buyers are being hunted
Yep.
relentlessly. So if I'm going to succeed as a salesperson, I need to elevate myself out of that pack. Whoever
100%.
I want to talk to, there's 100 other salespeople who are hunting that same
Yep.
person. And it's not just my immediate competitors, it's everybody else in the
Yep.
B2B ecosystem who wants a piece of that person, wants a piece of their time, wants a piece of their attention.
Yep.
And if I'm just doing the same thing as I've always done and doing the same thing as everyone else is doing, hitting the phones, hitting the
Mhm.
email,
Mhm.
I'm not rising above
Mhm.
that noise. I'm just part of the noise. So if I'm going to rise above the noise, I have to think differently. I have to act differently.
Yep.
And what my ultimate goal is, I want to become the one seller that they actually want to speak with.
Yes.
And if there's 100 people who want to speak with
Yep.
them, I want to be the one that
Yep.
they want
Yep.
to speak with.
That's right.
And I'm not going to get there by blowing up their phone every day. I'm
Yep.
not going to get there by emailing. And I'm not saying there's anything wrong. The phone is it's an important part of sales.
Yep.
Email is an important part of sales, but don't stop there.
Yep.
Also build your reputation, build your network, be visible. You can't phone them every day and you can't email them every day, like I said, but you actually can be seen and heard and
Yep.
understood every single day on
Yep.
LinkedIn if you make it part of what you do. It doesn't replace those other things, it augments them. And
Yep.
this is how you elevate yourself above everyone else and you start to become the seller that they actually want to speak with. And that can change everything.
Absolutely, 100%. I agree with that. It's also a disservice to the companies that want to hear from these companies. I mean, especially now, like the technology is changing so fast, and new applications and new services are coming available through AI and otherwise all the time. And these companies actually need to find out about these technologies. And the only way that they're going to find out about them is maybe they go to a trade show, maybe an email does make it through. But on one hand, you've got these, whether they're executives or anybody in the organization who wants to learn about new technologies. On the other hand, you've got people who are trying to let them know about the technologies through the phone, through email, whatever. But there's a disconnect, and it's just not working. And I think the opportunity that's not being capitalized on hardly at all is like what you're talking about, to break through that noise, to go have real conversations with people who want to have those conversations. They're there in, like you say, the world's largest business conversation to speak to and learn from other smart people who have smart ideas and smart technologies and what have you.
Absolutely. But you have to come from a much more buyer centric, client centric
Yes.
mindset
Yeah.
than most salespeople and most marketers and most executives are coming from because they come, in most cases, they come from that selfish place, that all about me.
Yeah.
I'm going to tell you all about me, all about my
Yeah.
technology, all about how great we are. And then we're going to go through a sales cycle and you're going
Right.
to buy from me.
Right.
And but that's not the way people actually buy,
Right.
right? I mean, we all have a consideration set for everything. We're all out there. Most of us are not actively buying any tool or technology. And you see all sorts of different numbers, 3%, 5% of people are in an active buying
Yeah.
cycle. And there's things you do for and with them, of course.
Yeah.
But what about the other 95% of people? Do you just write them off?
Mm.
Or do you purposefully nurture their awareness of you, their understanding of you, their belief that you have a compelling perspective and experience in this space as individuals and as a firm? I say we need to do that other part, and it needs to be a critical part of what we're doing because we need to be in their consideration set. Because when they do move into an active buying cycle, they're probably only going to talk to 3 or 4 companies. And
Yep.
there might be 20 in the industry, there might be 50. How do we make sure we're in the consideration set? How do we make sure we're one of the 3 or 4 companies that they actually talk to? Well,
Mm.
marketing's going to be doing a bunch of stuff and doing events and advertising. All great, keep doing it. But on top of that, what are our individual people doing
Mm.
to build that awareness, build that reputation, build those relationships that are going to help make sure that we are in the consideration set? And if we're not in the consideration set, our win rate is zero.
Mm.
Absolute zero. I mean, the biggest loss for most companies is not the deals that you lost, the deals that you had an active cycle and then lost to a competitor. It's the deals that you weren't even in.
Mm.
The deals
Yeah.
that
True.
you weren't even in the
You're not
consideration
even part
set.
of the
It
conversation.
happened without you,
Yep.
and you weren't even there. So,
Yep.
I mean, we tend to over rotate on what happens once we're in the consideration set, we're in the deal, and we tend to be rather blind
Yep.
to how we get there in the first place. And I think just because it's harder to measure and it's longer time
Yeah.
frame, it is not a good reason to ignore it.
100%. One thing that I've done is I like to, look at root problems. I'm kind of a problem solver by nature. This is how I'm wired, and so I'm always looking for the root problems. What do you think are the root problems behind all of this, and how do we solve it?
Short-term thinking and obsession with attribution.
Hmm.
I think
Hmm.
those are the two things. And I'm not blaming the individuals nearly as much as I'm blaming the companies.
Hmm.
This goes to the C-suite. This goes to the board in this obsession with attribution. You know the old saying, if it's not in Salesforce, it didn't
Yep.
happen. What a ridiculous statement that is. What a ridiculous statement. There are all sorts of things that are not in Salesforce
Mhm.
or they're not in your marketing
Yep.
attribution software that did happen.
Yep.
That conversation where one executive, mentioned to a friend this
Yep.
great company there were that's not
Right.
in Salesforce.
No.
The fact that you're speaking at a conference and a lot of people saw you and they were drawn towards you, the fact that people are seeing you on social and other things, like there's a whole
Yep.
lot that drives deals forward,
Yeah.
puts you in the consideration set, alters the way companies think about
Yep.
even what the criteria
Yep.
are for making a choice. And these things are really hard and in some cases impossible to measure, so
Mhm.
we ignore them. So I think that the number one thing is, I mean, well, I don't know which is the number one and which is the number two, but it's short-term thinking. Like if it's not pipeline and it's not an active deal today, it doesn't matter. Stop
It doesn't
wasting your
matter.
time
Yeah.
on it.
Right.
So short-term thinking coupled with a belief that everything can and should be measurable. And people wear it on their sleeve. Oh, I'm a data-driven marketer. We're data-driven, data-driven. Well, yeah, that's good until it's not. I mean, it's good insofar as, of course, data is important. Of course, measurement is important. Measure everything that you can and use it as one input in your decision making, but don't believe that the world ends at the end of your data set. It
Mm.
does not.
Right.
There's a lot more going on out there that you cannot measure. And if you completely ignore it because you can't measure it, then you are going to be outperformed by firms who think differently. So, to answer your question, it's short term thinking coupled with obsession with attribution, I think, is at the root of for salespeople and sales teams, also for marketers.
Yeah. So let me ask you this. So one of the ideas that I've been pushing is that a root problem across a number of different areas, including what we're talking about here, is that there is nobody in an organization who is responsible for communications holistically across the organization. So of course, every company, not every company, but medium and large size companies, they have somebody in charge of communications. But the problem is that it's never communications across the board, right? From sales to marketing to HR to operations, et cetera, et cetera. It's always just communications. It's PR, it's corporate comms, it's internal comms, right? It's the messaging that we put out. Back to what you were saying earlier, and it's about having mostly a safe reputation out in the world, right? And I know that that's not the full extent of communications. That communications is it's everything. And the reason why I called the company Everything Communications is because communications is everything. It is our customer experiences. It is our employee experiences. It is how we engage prospects and existing customers, and how we build relationships and how we build trust. It's through the communication. And so to me, what I've seen as a root problem is that the reason why you don't have the enablement in the organization, and why sales managers and sales leadership has an old-fashioned mindset about, salespeople shouldn't be wasting their time on LinkedIn. They should be picking the phone and making sales calls. I think it's because there's not somebody in their organization who owns communication and is bringing them the best in terms of thought leadership and data and technology and everything else to say, actually, make sure your salespeople, yes, of course, they should be sending emails and making phone calls, but they should also be joining the world's largest conversation, right? All the conversations that are relevant, where people are looking for services like ours, right? We are going to be surfacing those conversations up. We're going to be feeding them out to you. Engage with these people, right? Get into these groups on whether it's LinkedIn or Reddit, wherever the groups are. But to go out there into the world where our customers are, have conversations with them. To me, that's one of the biggest root problems is that there's nobody in the organization who's owning that. Communications is a very narrow thing that is simply about the messaging and not about how do we maximize and optimize communications across organization. What are your thoughts on that? Is that
I agree. And, where it goes wrong so often is when someone does recognize the power of LinkedIn, the power of social media, and when they recognize the fact that their people collectively have a tremendous reach. I mean, if the average employee has a couple of thousand connections, let's say, multiply that across hundreds or
yeah,
thousands of employees, people start getting excited about the reach. But here's where they go wrong. They treat those people like Wi-Fi extenders
right,
for the corporate marketing
right.
message. And you fall into what I call the hey everyone trap.
Mm,
Hey everyone,
mm,
reshare our latest post.
mhm, yeah,
Hey everyone, reshare our blog. Hey
mhm,
everyone, tell your network that we just won that award. Hey everyone. And it's this idea of activating, I hate that word, activating your people
mhm,
like Wi-Fi extenders for your promotional messages. That's not a good experience for your people.
mm,
And it's not at all interesting to your customers and prospects and partners and everyone else that you hope to reach
yeah,
and influence. You need to go beyond activating your people and think instead about empowering and enabling them
mm,
such that they can go out and, yes, they can promote the company. That could be one part. I like to think about approaching this great business conversation that LinkedIn is with a balanced diet of content. One food group is your corporate content. Yeah, by all means, tell the world you guys just won an award or you hit some milestone. Great, do
yeah,
it. But the problem is people stop there.
yeah,
What else are you going to bring? What else are you going to bring? I say show up in this conversation with an honest intent to educate and inspire and help others.
mm,
And honest intent is the emphasis there because if you try to fake it, it's going to be really
yeah,
transparent to people. So when you show up with an honest intent to educate, inspire, and help others, you share some company content, you share some industry content, you bring your own voice, you share
yeah,
some personal content, and now you're being much more interesting, you're being much more relevant, you're
mm,
starting to build that reputation, those relationships, build that trust. You start becoming a magnet for the right conversations with the right people at the right time. And that is entirely different from treating your people like Wi-Fi extenders for
yeah.
marketing.
100% it is. I agree with that so much. I think that's a perfect summary. So I've got two more questions for you. What about from the CEO perspective? What are CEOs missing about social media?
I think one, in addition to everything we've already talked about, I think there's a bit of a trust gap. I find that a lot of senior leaders are hesitant to enable and empower their people to go out
Yeah,
and be much more than Wi-Fi extenders.
right.
And they say things like, well, I mean, not all our people have had media training. And, not all of our people are authorized spokespeople for the company. And we're
Mm,
not comfortable
mhm,
with what they might say. I think that's a really outdated mindset. And I
mhm,
will challenge that directly.
mhm,
I'll say to, when a CEO or another senior leader expresses those sorts of sentiments, they're uncomfortable with what their people might say. And I say, well, do you let your people use the telephone? And they say, well, of course we do. Well, what if they say something wrong?
mhm,
Uh, well, I mean, we just have to trust that they're grown-ups and that they're okay. Do you let them send emails? Well, of course we do. They couldn't do their job without it.
right.
Well, what if they say something wrong and that gets forwarded to the CEO of your biggest customer? Like
Yeah,
maybe you shouldn't let them use the phone and you shouldn't let them use emails either. Do you let them go to conferences and talk to people face to face? Because I don't know. What if they say, I mean, they might have a couple of drinks and say something wrong. I
sure.
don't think you should let them out of the building. And you start unpacking this and you realize all the places where
Yeah,
you absolutely have to trust your people
yeah,
to be smart and to be grown-ups
yeah,
and to be good stewards of their own reputation and the company's reputation. And we absolutely trust our people in all those ways.
yeah,
And in the very small number of cases where things go wrong, what do? We fire them. Well, you can do that on social media too. You can have a policy that says don't be an idiot, essentially. You don't need a 20-page policy of everything. You can just basically, be a good steward of your own reputation and of the company's reputation. Don't be an idiot. Conduct yourself in a way that you will have nothing to regret, and
Yeah.
everything's good here. And really, is it any different? I mean, can you really do any more damage on social media if you are an idiot than you could do on the telephone, face to face, in
I
an
think
email or
I
anything
think
else?
so.
I don't think you
The
can. I
audience
don't.
is a
I
lot
mean,
larger, so I think so.
well, I mean, it's not. It could be larger, but I mean, you send one really dumb email and it gets forwarded to the wrong people. That's
Oh,
a
that happens all the
crisis.
time.
That's a crisis, right?
Yeah.
But you don't stop your people from using email.
Sure. Right.
In
Yeah.
fact, in fact, that it's a core element of
Yeah.
their job. So you you both train them to be smart, but you also trust them
Yeah.
to be grown-ups. And I think we just need to see LinkedIn and other social media as just one more way that we communicate with other human beings.
Yeah.
I don't believe that it is a fundamentally different category. I just believe it's one more place that humans communicate with other humans. And if we trust people on a bunch of conversational platforms, we ought to trust them here as well.
Yeah, I do think that it comes back to what I was mentioning though about the problem being that there isn't somebody who is in charge of maximizing and optimizing communications for across the organization, but specifically for that role, right? For salespeople specifically, let's say, right, or even for executives, right? And part of the problem I think that exists today is that it's managed by communications. And the reason why I think that is not ideal, or at least in the existing state, is that communications, in my view, and you can tell me if you think I'm wrong, but communications, it is very much about protecting brand. And that's not a bad thing, it's a good thing, but that's not a reason for salespeople to go on LinkedIn is to protect the brand. That's also not a reason for them to pick the phone or send email to prospects is to protect the brand. It's a different thing that you're trying to do. You're trying to engage people in conversation. So if the people who are in charge of social media are the people who, and it changes organization to organization, but in many organizations it's kind of it's very controlled. It's almost like legal but with better writers. And maybe maybe they'll hate me saying that, but I don't know that that's so far from the truth. And it's about being safe and having a great reputation and not saying the wrong things and only saying the right things and not saying more than we should. And it's like that's what communications is largely about. When I'm using communications in this way, I'm talking about the communications team, the communications traditionally. But from a sales perspective, that's not what communications is about at all. So I think that's part of the problem. And also where it needs to be part of the solution is having somebody in charge of those communications who does think differently, who does think about social for the way that you and I think about it in the grand opportunity that it is, greater than any other opportunity compared to email or their telephone or anything else. There is no other channel that is as powerful as social media. And so, without somebody in the organization who understands that and is not just saying that, but providing the enablement and the training on how to do it for the salespeople and the technology for how to do that and how to do it well so that they're listening through technology to the right discussions and then getting involved in those discussions. There's a lot that goes in it. So I 100% agree with you that trust is a crucial component. Trust your people to go have those conversations, and encourage them to go have those conversations. However, what I'm saying is there's also a very necessary component to this, which is the training and enablement and technology to
Yes.
enable that. Do you agree with that?
Absolutely.
Yeah.
And doubly so in regulated industries. You start looking at
Oh
financial
yeah.
services. Now we're talking about actual government regulations
Sure.
on what you can and cannot say with massive fines if you get it wrong. So I don't mean to suggest that it's just the Wild West and like everything's going to be fine.
Mhm.
Yeah, the way I challenge people to think a little differently about risk is that it's not just one risk. It's actually a continuum of risk I maintain. On one hand, there's the regulatory risk or the reputation risk, but at the other end, there's business risk.
Yes.
And what I mean by that is you can lock down, like you can absolutely, you can tell your people you cannot post anything on LinkedIn except for authorized company content. You cannot comment on other people's posts because that could be seen as an endorsement. You cannot like their posts because that could be seen as an endorsement. You could lock it down hard
Yeah.
and sleep well at night knowing that you have protect your firm, you
Right.
have protected your firm from risk. But hang on a second. You've protected your firm from one kind of risk.
One kind of
You have
risk.
opened
Yep.
the
Yep.
door to business risk.
That's right.
Because if your competitors are not taking such a lockdown mentality and they're actually enabling and empowering their
Yeah.
people to build reputation and
Yeah.
build relationships and build trust and join these conversations and be human beings,
Yeah.
well, they're going to start attracting more
Sure.
clients. They're going to start getting themselves into that consideration
Yep.
set that you're not in. So if you lock down hard because you think risk only exists in this one part of
Yeah.
the spectrum, you open the door to the other risk. So you have to find the balance between those two things. You
Yeah.
have to protect your firm and you have to enable and empower your people to go out there and build business.
Yeah.
And the balance is going to be a little different in every firm. It's going to be a little bit different in every industry. There's not one way to do it. But if you're not thinking about it this way, you are very likely to over optimize on
Yep.
policy
Yep.
heavy restrictions. Don't do this, don't do that, don't do anything.
Yep.
And that is not a smart play in today's world.
100%. I think not being relevant is the biggest risk in all of this, and that applies to the salespeople. That applies to the executives. That applies to personal brands. That applies to the company's brand. Why people or companies wouldn't want to be relevant in conversations that matter to them? I don't
Relevant,
get that.
yes. And I would also add authentic or human
Yep.
or whatever your choice of words is. I mean, we do business with people we know, like, and trust. We do business with people who we believe have not only their own best interests in mind, but ours as well.
Mhm.
And, we don't tend to know, like, or trust Wi Fi extenders or content robots or,
Mm.
nonstop hunters or nonstop promoters. We don't like them, we don't trust them, and we build walls to keep them away. So, yes, you're absolutely right, David. We need to be relevant, but we also need to be authentically human. And if we can get that right, then we set ourselves miles ahead of our competitors.
Love it. Steve, I'm going to go ahead and let you close. Last thoughts for the audience. What would you share with them?
I think fundamentally, individuals and firms are missing a huge opportunity on social media and in particular on LinkedIn, that it requires different mindsets, it requires different skill sets. And those firms that are figuring this out and starting to build something different, a different culture, a different approach, they are going to start to build a insurmountable competitive advantage. Wayne Gretzky famously said, you skate to where the puck is going, not where the puck is. I sincerely believe this is where the puck is going. I'm proud to be part of a company that is skating towards that, and other companies are as well. But there's a whole lot of firms and a whole lot of individuals that have not yet seen where the puck is going. And I think that that is a big problem.
Yeah, which is I love that. Thank you. Which is crazy to me because the puck has been going there for so long,
But
right?
it's going in slow motion, it seems, doesn't it? Like I mean, it's going, and some people have been skating there for a long time.
Yep.
And some people are great at it, and
Yep.
and some small companies are great at it.
Mm.
Not too many mid-size or large companies are great at it. So there's a lot, there's a lot of open ice in front of
There's
us.
a lot of open ice. That, yeah, there you go. We're going to close on that. There's a lot of open ice out there. Steve, thank you so much for joining. It's a great conversation. Appreciate you on LinkedIn. If you're not following Steve, make sure that you check him out. Steve Watt at Seismic. Steve, thanks so much for joining me. And
Thanks, David. That was a lot of
absolutely
fun.
right on. Thank you all for joining us today. Don't forget to like and subscribe.